Yes, we will have the Garrett Wilson update with the Aaron Rodgers injury. Plus, we are going to be looking at some other injury updates, such as George Pickens moving up these rankings with no Deontay Johnson. Tier 1, though, everything remains the same. You go Tyreek, you go Jefferson. Jefferson actually plays tonight, so make sure, please, get him in your starting lineup as if you would ever put him on your bench. I mean, now, going over to Tier 2, I didn't have Amon-Ra St. Brown this high initially, but we went over and looked at the pick'ems on Underdog Fantasy, and they had Amon-Ra St. Brown for the third highest mark this week at 79.5. And I was sitting here going, why the hell do they have Amon-Ra St. Brown this high? Then it kind of clicked. Okay, I mean, this is a matchup going up against the Seattle Seahawks where they are 6-point favorites. And last time we saw a team go up against Seattle, Puka went out there and was a top 5 wide receiver in fantasy. So it looks like Amon-Ra St. Brown is someone that we have to lock in. No disrespect to Puka. We will be talking about him later on in the video. Now, going over to 4, we have Chase. Don't hesitate to start Chase. Don't hesitate to start Higgins. Right now, Cincinnati's favored by 3.5 points in this game against the Baltimore Ravens. Should be able to effectively move the ball down the field. I mean, I'm not worried in the slightest. Now, Diggs at 5, wide receiver that's going to be locked and loaded every single week. He's actually one of my most drafted round 1 players in fantasy this year, just because the floor and ceiling combo is so damn high. I know Allen didn't look great against the Jets, but should be a much easier matchup against the Raiders. A.J. Brown will play tonight as well. And I do want to remind everybody, please make sure you go take advantage of the Jalen Hurts special pick'em. More than less than half a passing yard on Underdog Fantasy. You're going to get that special pick'em if you're new to Underdog and use promo code FLOCK. If you sign up after the game tonight, you are also going to be looking at a Joe Burrow special pick'em, more than less than half a passing yard against the Baltimore Ravens. Promo code FLOCK, you're also going to get a 100% deposit match up to $100. You're going to get our 2023 fantasy football rankings, a free trial to flockfantasy.com. And also, ladies and gentlemen, if you are on Underdog Fantasy, please include the Tua total yards pick'em in your pick'em slip this weekend. That way you get entered in to win the $100,000 prize pool. Underdog is going to be giving away $10,000 to 10 different people every single weekend throughout the rest of the season. Now, going over to our next guy, we will have CeeDee Lamb at 7. Now, Brandon Cooks not at practice with the knee injury. If Brandon Cooks were to miss, I think maybe CeeDee Lamb would jump over A.J. Brown. We're rapid firing these early guys, right? Because you're starting them no matter what. Adams at 8. Adams didn't practice with a foot. Right now, they are massive dogs against the Buffalo Bills as well. But I mean, hell, Jacoby Myers not at practice with the concussion. So if Myers misses, Devontae Adams, getting 35% of this team's targets. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we will go Calvin Ridley at 9. Now, the Underdog pick'em's actually a little lower with Calvin Ridley than maybe someone like Jalen Waddle later on. But I'm just looking at this matchup going up against Kansas City Chiefs saying, okay, well, Kelsey looks like he's good to go. The Chiefs should be able to put points up on the board. Right now, the Chiefs are favored by about 3 points. I think this is going to cause the Jacksonville Jaguars to throw the ball with aggression if they want to keep up. This is projected to be the highest scoring game of the week. So I think we kind of have to be ahead of market with Calvin Ridley based off what we saw last week, of course. Then Chris Olave at 10, was a little bit worried about Olave. I didn't draft much Michael Thomas this year, and we did draft a lot of Olave. Michael Thomas definitely getting a volume in week 1, but obviously Olave came through. We'll talk about Thomas later on. Now we will have Jalen Waddle at 11. Waddle remains a buy low candidate for us. Please do not think that Tyreek Hill is going to continue to go out there and just have 200 receiving yards every single week. I would love it to be the case. Trust me, we'd be printing money. But in reality, it's probably going to go back and forth depending on the overall game environment, depending on the defensive coordinator and his plan to stop one of these wide receivers. I mean, hell, last year we saw Jalen Waddle only have 5 targets in week 1, and that was followed up with 19 targets in week 2. Please buy low on Jalen Waddle, and you have to start him if you have him. Now, our next guy will be Devonta Smith at 12. Obviously, going up against the Vikings tonight, must-start player, elite-level offense. They're favored by 7 points. I know the wide receiver situation is not too interesting here. Primarily interested to see the involvement for Dallas Goedert, and it looks like Kenneth Gainwell is not going to be playing on Thursday as well, so I'm very interested to see what we get from DeAndre Swift. Now, we will go Brandon Ayuk at 13. And honestly, if you're looking at the Underdog pick'ems, they have Brandon Ayuk even lower than this. They have Brandon Ayuk only at 55.5 receiving yards for this next week. I think the reason is you're going up against the Rams, where the 49ers are 8-point favorites, where more likely than not, they are going to be able to just run the ball in the second half. I think that's why the Underdog pick'em so low. I mean, hell, in reality, they blew the doors off the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, and Brandon Ayuk still had a fine game with the amount of passing volume that was in San Fran. So I think Ayuk definitely must-start player. Keenan's going to be at 14 with Keenan Allen. I mean, my issues going into the season in terms of his red flags were his age, leading to potentially a higher injury risk, while at the same time just seeing the addition of Quentin Johnston. Early on in the season, these rookie wide receivers, especially in the case of Quentin Johnston, not someone that you have to worry about. I think you can be very excited about the early season production for Keenan. We are going to continue to monitor the ankle injury for Austin Eckler. I know it sounds weird, but obviously with the target share Eckler sees in this offense, if Eckler were to miss, Keenan Allen would actually even go higher. Now, DeAndre Hopkins was a big surprise week 1. I mean, it was a horrendous game where Ryan Tannehill looked like garbage, but DeAndre Hopkins did go out there and have like 13 targets. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins was a straight-up target hog this week. Yes, Burks had his first week back. Burks dealing with the knee injury, we know. But nonetheless, looks like Hopkins, based off this volume, is a must-start guy. And right now, they are only 3.5-point dogs against the Los Angeles Chargers. So I think we're going to assume that they look to go through and look to have a little bit of better quarterback play than Ryan Tannehill. While at the same time, we just saw what Tyreek and Tua did to this Chargers secondary last week. Now, dropping down to our next tier, what's very interesting is Underdog Pick'ems right now, like DK Metcalf, 65.5 receiving yards. T. Higgins at 59.5, well ahead of Brandon Ayuk in the tier above. I'm still going to rank these wide receivers lower. Now, in the case of Seattle, it's very tough, right? The offensive line did no favors for Geno Smith week 1. Geno Smith himself didn't look that good. I mean, hell, we thought that the Rams were going to be able to go out there and we thought the Rams were going to get smoked by the Seattle Seahawks. No, but the Rams play good defense. And here, the matchup against Detroit looked damn good against KC week 1 as well. And the Seattle Seahawks are 6-point dogs. So I think we have to be a little bit lower on Metcalf than the projections and the pick'ems indicate. So yeah, even if Ayuk's only at 55.5 yards and Metcalf's at 65.5, we will have Metcalf the tier below, just given what we saw last week. And then T. Higgins, I'm still going to be starting him. Still think he's a must-start guy. It's a wide receiver that had 8 targets week 1. And as we were mentioning previously, Las Vegas sportsbooks have the Cincinnati Bengals as a borderline top 5 offense with their implied team totals this next week. Shouldn't be really concerned about Burrow. We know Burrow's good, and Higgins is getting volume. Now, this is where I'm going to slide in Garrett Wilson. I want to be on record. I want to say Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall are elite level players. They truly are. With that being said, Las Vegas sportsbooks right now have the largest spread of the week. The New York Jets, Dallas Cowboys, 9.5 points. The implied team total that we have for the New York Jets is the lowest in the NFL, only at 16. Right now, Vegas sportsbooks, which know more than you do, which know more than I do, which will be better than anybody watching this video or anybody making videos on YouTube, they are telling us that this offense projects to be worse than the Arizona Cardinals in week 2. I want to be avoiding them where I can. Obviously, you're not going to be able to sell Garrett Wilson. Nobody's buying Garrett Wilson. But I do want to reiterate what we said earlier on. With Breece Hall, you can actually kind of save yourself. You can still get out of this offense. You can sell Breece Hall for Travis Etienne in a lot of leagues. I think you probably start Garrett Wilson as a mid to low-end wide receiver too. It's just a brutal matchup for Zach Wilson here. Now, Deebo Samuel will be our next guy. I mean, Deebo, I'm sorry that we ranked him ahead of Brandon Ayuk last week. Promise you we're not going to make that mistake again. Evans, Godwin, our next 2 wide receivers. I mean, right now they project 57, 55.5 receiving yards. I mean, we know this will be an offense that's highly concentrated between these 2 players. Baker didn't look that bad last week. I mean, hell, he was good enough to win the football game. And overall, I mean, I'm really excited to see what we get long-term if we actually see just a more efficient passing offense overall. And so obviously, we know Evans, Godwin are elite level talents. Both can get to a 25% team target share. Now, Mike Williams will be at 22 with Mike Williams. I think you can kind of put him ahead of this. And ultimately, that's why we do these tier lists, right? Because if you wanted to make an argument that Mike Williams is as high as 16, you do you. Our next guy, Amari Cooper. If you wanted to make an argument that Amari Cooper is as high as 16, you do you. The reason I make these in tiers is if a player's within a certain tier, I think you can rank them however you want. This is personally how I rank them. I just want to make sure that we're not going through and starting, say, like DK Metcalf over Jalen Waddle, right? That's why we break it down so you can have your own opinion and please make your own calls within the tiers. The tiers are just a general guide. I know it looks like we're really low on Mike Williams and Amari Cooper here. It's more so just all these wide receivers in this tier are about the same. Now, going over to our next tier, we will have George Pickens, top 24 wide receiver this week, ladies and gentlemen. With George Pickens, it's official. You have no Deontay Johnson for about a month. I think you get a bump when it comes to the target share of both Pickens as well as Pat Freiermuth. And with Pickens in particular, this is a wide receiver that we know can win at the catch point. The question is, can he generate separation? Can he draw a 25% team target share? Those are questions that have remained yet to be answered. Now, of course, if he goes out there and he dominates and he sees 9 targets this week, he will be a lot higher in the rankings next week. But I mean, going up against the Browns, we saw the Browns defense just shut down Burrow. Now, our next wide receiver will be Terry McLaurin. With McLaurin, he was not inside our top 30 wide receivers last week. A lot of people got upset, but you don't want to start a wide receiver coming off a turf toe. Something we don't want to do. Now, his second week back, tough matchup going up against Denver where they are 3.5-point dogs. But I mean, we did just see Jacoby Myers. We just saw Devontae Adams find some production here. So I will go ahead. I think this is the week you can go ahead and start Terry McLaurin. Now, Christian Watson, 26, similar to what we were talking about and how we didn't want to start Terry McLaurin last week, and that we're generally trying to avoid these players that are dealing with injuries. We have Christian Watson deal with the hamstring. I am very encouraged long-term what we have from the Green Bay Packers, and more importantly, from Christian Watson in fantasy football with the play of Jordan Love week 1 against the Chicago Bears. I really like the idea of buying low on Watson. I don't know at this moment if he is going to be able to be relied upon Sunday, given the hamstring injury. And more times than not, these players coming back from these injuries, it's better to play it safe than sorry. Let him perform. Let him produce for a week. Maybe even comes back in a limited capacity. Maybe he's playing limited snaps. Maybe he's more so just a decoy to create separation underneath for a player like Romeo Doubs. I think week 3, hopefully, will be the week we can finally go out there and rely on Christian Watson. Now, Tyler Lockett at 27, I'm a little bit worried about Lockett, not going to lie. Because when it comes to Metcalf, I think Metcalf can kind of get there regardless of if this offense is horrible or not. I don't know how productive Tyler Lockett will be going into year 10 of his NFL career if Geno Smith is bad, if the offensive line is bad, especially if we have JSN expanding his role as well. So I'm really hoping that this Seattle Seahawks offense will be much better this week with hopefully healthier and more improved offensive line. Last week, it was disgusting, but we'll see, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, if we can find a better option than Lockett, I would. Now, Michael Pittman will be our next wide receiver at 28. And to be honest with you, I don't even want Michael Pittman this low. Let's go ahead and let's move Michael Pittman to the top of this tier. I mean, we actually saw effectiveness from the Indianapolis Colts passing game, which is exactly what we were looking for coming into the season. Michael Pittman was one of my most drafted wide receivers here because we were taking a lot of Anthony Richardson. We were going to Michael Pittman as a wide receiver 4 in underdog drafts. I think at the end, he had an ADP of wide receiver 40. So yeah, if this offense is effective, I'm willing to move Michael Pittman up to 24. And yeah, I'm excited about seeing what he can do against Houston Texans this week. Zay just had a great game. Now, Jerry Jeudy, 29, kind of in the similar boat of Christian Watson this week, similar boat of Terry McLaurin last week. I like possibly what we have in the long term. In the short term, I'd rather him work his way back from the hamstring and look to start him in week 3. Now, Jordan Addison at 30 is an interesting case. And if you have Addison and you're sitting here going, okay, do I start Jordan Addison or do I start Christian Watson? Do I start Jordan Addison or do I start, say, Jerry Jeudy? And we don't know with hamstring injuries for these wide receivers at this moment. Then you would go ahead and honestly just start Jordan Addison on Thursday night. Don't feel like you have to roll the dice if you don't have a quality backup option. All I'll ask is if you're starting Jordan Addison tonight, please make sure you do not put him at your flex. Remember, rule of thumb, do not flex Thursday night players. Put them at your wide receiver 2 slot and slide whoever's at wide receiver 2 down to your flex spot. Now, our next wide receiver will be Zay Flowers. I know it looks low on Zay, and I'm very excited. He looks like the alpha wide receiver 1 in Baltimore, but now we're going to get Mark Andrews back. It will be interesting to see the passing volume you get overall for the wide receivers in Baltimore with Mark Andrews. So I think it is almost safe to say that, Andrews will be the number 1 target in this offense regardless. Now, DJ Moore will be our next player at 32. Going up against Tampa, the Chicago Bears are 3-point dogs against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We were coming out saying the Bears passing offense was still going to be very bad, even if they were the most improved passing offense in the NFL. But what I did not expect to see was DJ Moore actually having to compete for targets with guys like Darnell Mooney, with the running backs here. I thought it was going to be a horrendous passing offense, but DJ Moore was still going to get 25% of it. Still meant DJ Moore was in a void, but I didn't know it was going to be this bad. So I'd like to see, one, either the Bears offense look a little bit better, or two, DJ Moore just have a higher percentage of this offense, because last week he had a tiny slice of a tiny pie. Now, Michael Thomas will be our next wide receiver. Michael Thomas looks damn good now. I actually kind of want to go through and rank Michael Thomas higher than this. My issue is, if you have Shaheed taking a considerable amount of targets here as well, do we expect that you're going to have Olave as the dominant alpha number one guy, then Michael Thomas and Shaheed both getting a ton of looks? I don't know. We'll see what happens. This is going to be the Monday night game. Then Puka will be our next wide receiver at 34. I know this looks very low, but ladies and gentlemen, hear me out. He is going up against the San Francisco 49ers. We just saw what this 49ers defense did to the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you are looking at what Las Vegas sportsbooks are telling us right now, they currently have the 49ers favored by 8 points. They have the Rams with an implied team total of 18 points this week. The only teams that are supposed to be worse than the Rams offensively this week, the Cardinals, the Commanders, and the Jets. It's a brutal matchup. You definitely should have picked him up off the waiver wire if he was sitting out there. But I would much prefer starting someone in a better offense. I'd much prefer going through and starting even just say Michael Pittman this week. Now, John Dotson will be our next wide receiver. Dotson just looks way less appealing now that McLaurin's good to go. Especially if Washington can't effectively move the ball down the field. Going back to bad offenses, hell, right now Washington has an applied team total of only 17 points in comparison to the Rams at 18. I can't say avoid Puka, but start Dotson. And then our last wide receiver will be Jackson Smith-Njigba. Still love him in the long term, but until further notice, we still can't start him. Please, JSN, please, Geno Smith, turn this offense around. Give us some fantasy football production. But going up against the Detroit Lions as 6-point dogs, I don't know if we want to be starting like the wide receiver 3 for an offense that didn't look that good last week. But I think that's all I have for y'all. Again, thank you so much for checking out this video. If you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And if you want to check out any of the pick'ems that you saw in this video, or if you want to go take advantage of the Jalen Hurts special pick'em, more than less than half a passing yard against the Minnesota Vikings this next week, or if you want to take advantage of the Joe Burrow special pick'em if you sign up after the Thursday night game, you can find the link to Underdog Fantasy in the description, in the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, 100% of positive match. That special pick'em, Jalen Hurts, more than less than half a passing yard tonight. Or if you sign up after Thursday, you're going to get a Joe Burrow, more than less than half a passing yard against the Ravens on Sunday. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. Really hope you have a great day, and really hope that we get to see you out with the live stream later tonight.